Welcome to this edition of Leading in the 21st Century, Leadership Lessons from the Front Lines. In this podcast series, we interview leaders from various backgrounds and industries with the goal of understanding today's leadership landscape and to identify leadership best practices. I'm your host, Mike Cherry, and I'm an associate faculty member of the Organizational Leadership Department at Lewis University's College of Business. In our master's and bachelor's degree programs, we investigate various leadership theories with the intention of students applying these theories to their leadership practice. This podcast series is one way we can assist the transition from theory to practice. In this edition, our guest is Steve Gulden. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So Steve, to help set the context here around you as a leader, give us a little introduction to what you do, your role, and what are your specific leadership responsibilities?
Sure. I was very fortunate to graduate from the Masters of Organizational Leadership from Lewis University in 2005. I do serve on the advisory board for organizational leadership, and I just learned so many things from that program. You know, I thought I was a good leader until I got into the program and learned a lot. I was able to take those leadership characteristics and traits that I learned in the program and be able to apply them to my position. I was director of Park and Recreation for the Village of Romeo at that time. And then in 2006, our village manager had moved on, and the mayor at the time had asked me to be an interim village manager. And the first thing he asked was, "Hey, do you have your master's degree?" And I said, "Yes, I do, in organizational leadership," and took the public policy emphasis.
Right.
And he put me into the position of interim village manager, and 6 months later, he named me as permanent village manager.
Nice.
I'm in charge of day-to-day operations for the Village of Romeoville. We have about 260 employees, probably about 350 full-time equivalents with all the part-time staff. We have a $100 million budget. We have a $50 million operation budget. We have work with the police and fire, public works, economic development. So there's a lot of challenges every day. And again, going back through my experiences, and there's a lot of different formulas and a lot of different traits that you pick up along the way and apply them and try to get the best out of your people and try to give them the tools they need to succeed to have the whole organizational flourish.
Right. No, thanks for that. That's helpful. And with that broad, span there, 350, 260 employees, you probably see it all. And so I'm interested to hear your answer to this next question, which is, what are some of the trends you see now in leadership? Current trends.
So I see two trends. I see a negative trend and a positive trend. Okay. And so I'll just touch on the negative for a second. I do see a trend in some areas where ego becomes a very characteristic of some leaders, and especially in some of the younger leaders that I see that it's them first. It's can I get the credit? What's in it for me? So I see that it's prevalent in some of the areas. On the positive perspective, I see a lot of collaboration, a lot of collaborative leadership. I think that programs such as the Lewis University program and programs at different universities and the MBA programs are very quantitative, it's numbers and so forth. These programs such as this one, the Organizational Leadership Program, is developing leaders. It's you have the leadership characteristics. It's getting those characteristics out. These type of programs, and a lot of individuals are taking these programs in leadership roles, and so now they're understanding that it's not about me. Right. It's not about what's in it for me. It's about what's best for the organization, what's best for everyone. And collaboration, I think, is a key component to success. And I see a lot of collaboration. It's no more dictatorial leadership.
Okay.
Even the Army. I was just at a seminar where a general spoke, and even the Army is being very collaborative. Where 15 years ago it was do as I say and do it now.
Right.
They're becoming very collaborative. They're empowering their people. So I see that trend, which is a very positive trend.
Right.
And hopefully that continues.
Yeah. No, excellent. As you think back on your career, who were your leadership role models that kind of helped you define and maybe hone your leadership practice?
Sure. First and foremost is my mom.
Yeah.
My mom was she was a true public servant, and she ran bingo for 100 years for the church at St. Andrews. She served on the CCW, Catholic Council of Women.
Okay.
She spent a lot of hours with the church, and then she got into public service with the community through Chamber of Commerce and so forth. And she became mayor at one point a long time ago. And
in Romeoville?
In Romeoville, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, yes, back in the early 90s.
All right.
So, so her sense of service, her sense of giving back to the community, really, I really absorbed that. And I can tell a story. I was probably about 18 years old. I just graduated from high school and didn't know what I wanted. I had no idea what path I wanted to take. So I took the fall semester off. I was going to go to Joy Junior College. Took the fall semester off, and we had a big, almost a tornado, not quite a tornado, came through Romeoville. And like an 18-year-old with no path, I was probably sleeping around noon, 1 o'clock, right? And my mom calls, and she says, Steve, there was a tornado, and there's a lot of trees down on Murphy Drive, which is on the other side of town. They need help. I go, okay, good. They need help. And she says, get your butt out there and start helping those people pick up trees.
Right.
And so that, I'll never forget that story.
Yeah.
And so she gave me that inspiration to serve first, to serve your community, serve your people, serve your organization. So she was a huge influence, not only by her words, but by her actions.
Sure.
In my leadership philosophy. And the second one is, maybe I don't know if it's strange or not, but I'm a big historian.
Yeah.
So I really like Dwight Eisenhower, his leadership characteristics. Here's an individual that wasn't the smartest person in his West Point class, wasn't the greatest tactician, but he served. He served his people. He collaborated. He's got a famous quote that says, hey, if there's a success, everyone gets the credit. If there's a failure, I take the blame.
Okay.
And so his men and women would just do anything for him. And I kind of want to emulate that and say, hey, it's my job to serve you.
Yeah.
And it's my job to make sure I elicit feedback. And so I kind of use those two as my leadership role models.
No, that's helpful. You mentioned service. There's collaboration in there as well. What are some other characteristics that you believe effective leaders demonstrate?
I think so. There's two leadership styles that I try to emulate, to aspire to preach and coach. Is one, servant leadership. I believe in servant leadership. It is my job to give the tools to my people for they can succeed, and whatever those tools are. If they're being hands off, if they're being hands on, if it's coaching day to day, if it's letting them do some things on their own, it's my job to serve them. And so it kind of reverses the old theories where the people serve the leader,
right?
And flip that upside down, whereas the leader serves the people. So I really try to aspire to be a servant leader.
Yeah.
And the other thing I really aspire to be is to be a collaborative leader. And to me, it is so important for a leader to self-assess and to say, hey, here's my strengths, here's my weaknesses. And every leader has weakness and every leader has great strengths. But good leaders, great leaders will acknowledge their weaknesses and say, hey, I need to do something. I need to augment or complement my strengths, and I need something to augment my weaknesses. Right. And so for me, I'm a very visionary. I'm impatient, but I'm very visionary and say, hey, this is what I like to see. This is how I want this, parcel of land to be developed, or this is how I want this department to look like. And I can paint that picture and tell that story, but I'm not a very detail, get down into the weeds oriented person. So I hire people who are detailed, who can get down into the weeds and can be a bulldog in getting things done, because that's not my strength. And I think it's really important that a leader identifies their strengths and weaknesses. And a lot of leaders fail to do that because, number one, ego. I have no weaknesses. That's a mistake.
Right.
So I believe in doing a lot of self-assessment, and again, collaboration. We talked about that a little bit earlier. It is so important to collaborate to solicit feedback from your people, and you don't have all the answers. And collectively, you create a really good product if you empower people, and you solicit their feedback, and you say that, hey, I want you to debate me. I want you to say, hey, I'm wrong, or I think you're wrong. I think debate and conflict is very important, as long as that conflict is not personal, as long as that conflict it's a conflict of ideas. So I preach all the time is, hey, give me conflict of ideas so we can debate this, and so we can turn around and say, good idea, let's look at it this way. I never looked at it that way before. Let's spin it, turn it, throw it up in the air, and figure out what's the best approach. So to me, a really good leader with good characteristics tries to, in a way, to solicit that conflict of ideas and to collaborate to figure out the best approach to solving a problem or to setting the future vision.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. And you've mentioned collaboration quite a few times.
Yes.
And what specifically have you done, or what processes or activities do you build into your leadership to help bring people together?
Sure. So we have meetings. Everybody dreads meetings, right?
Right.
Meetings are you spend an hour and a half and nothing gets done, and you leave the meeting just with either more work or shaking your head.
Yeah.
What did we just talk about for the last hour and a half? So what I try to do is, number one, I try to make sure that at our meetings that everybody has the input. So if it's quiet, it's a Monday morning, we have a meeting, and everybody's just kind of like, hey, it's Monday morning.
Right.
My brain's not working right now. I try to say, hey, here's the challenge, and I use a whiteboard quite a bit, and say, hey, here's our challenge. Let's start listing the different remedies or the different things we can do to solve this problem, and it's quiet, and I'll just keep on, almost like a teacher in a classroom saying that, hey, raise your hand if you have any questions, and nobody raises their hand, right?
Sure.
And you have to keep on pushing and stretching to make sure we get that feedback. And so I think that's really, really important to do that. Right. Development meetings. We have this big table that's a big U-shaped table, 20 people at this table.
Wow.
And it's like, King Arthur's court here, right? It's not a very, and a developer comes in, he sits in the middle.
Oh my.
Right, so it's not a very good environment, I guess.
That's an interesting setup.
Yeah. So I prefer to have, come into I want a conference table.
Sure.
Right, so everybody can just sit around the table.
All right.
And I want everyone to feel that they have a seat at the table.
Right.
Regardless if it's the assistant fire chief or if it's the fire marshal who can make some decisions. It doesn't matter. I want everyone to have a seat at the table and make them feel welcome. And the key, in my opinion, to make sure they feel welcome is to constantly solicit that feedback and just not be satisfied with just, it's good. Or why is it good? Why is it bad? And constantly ask those questions and constantly get them engaged.
Right.
And I think that's a really important role. The second thing, one of the things with servant leadership is coaching. Right, so coaching is so important. I think that a lot of leaders are so busy with their day-to-day operations and managing.
Sure.
Everyone says a leader shouldn't manage. A leader leads. Well, that's great in the book world, but when you're actually, running an organization or you're working in a division of an organization, you're doing a lot of day-to-day things, right? Budgets and solving problems with unions and whatever else. And so, but you have to coach, and you have to find time to coach every day.
Right.
And regardless of who it is, what time of day it is, and so you need to coach every day. And I'm a big sports guy, so I always like to use sports analogies. And, you see a little league game going on, and here's a 12-year-old pitcher throwing, and he's walking several guys, and the coach goes, Johnny, Jimmy, throw strikes, and he's yelling at him, just throw a strike.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the coach never taught him how to throw a strike.
Right.
What's he doing wrong that he's not throwing strikes? And so instead of just saying, Johnny, throw a strike, you need to figure out why he's not throwing a strike and coach him and lead him and teach him the proper ways to do things.
Right.
And that same analogy is no different than running an organization, having your department heads do different things. You have to coach them. You have to, again, give them the tools, whatever tools they are. You have to give them the tools so they can throw that strike and so they can succeed, because your job is to get them to succeed.
Right. No, that's helpful. Those specifics are great. Would you mind completing a statement for us?
No problem. Sure.
I know I am a leader because.
That's a really good statement, right? Right. It's tough. It's like when you're in a job interview, they always ask you for your strengths and weaknesses.
Right.
And everybody will give you the everybody give you the strength, but everybody's afraid to give a little weakness because it could hurt in the interview. I believe I'm a leader because I try to, and I put a huge emphasis on empowering my staff and making them feel a part of the organization. To me, giving your staff worthwhile work, giving them something that they enjoy. Someone once said that you are blessed if you're good at what you do and you enjoy what you do. You are, a lot of people are good at what they do, but they don't like doing it, or they like doing something but not really that good at. But you're blessed if you have both. And so what I try to do is, I think that's my greatest strength, is that I give my staff the ability to debate, use their ideas, solicit that feedback, collaborate, and serve them. And so they succeed. So when I see someone succeed, and I see Johnny throwing a strike, then I know I've been a good leader. And to me, that's important. That's really important, seeing your staff succeed. Seeing your police chief, who is a great police chief, start a new program, a youth academy, a youth police academy, because we're preaching community involvement, and a youth basketball program for at-risk kids that the police department started, and see 75 kids show up. And you see police officers playing basketball with these kids. And I look back and say, hey, maybe I had a little part in that by trying to preach this community involvement, this collaboration, this feedback, this coaching, and boy, maybe they got some of that. And so that's where I think when you smile, or when you drive down someplace in Romaville and you see a nice park, or you see this really nice development, and say, hey, boy, maybe some of the long staff meetings and long development meetings in King Arthur's courts did work. And look at the result. So that's important, and I think it's really important for a leader to sit back and always, because leaders are most critical of themselves, right? So no one's a bigger critic of what I do than me, and so a lot of leaders don't give themselves enough credit and say, boy, I had a part in this. And I think that's it. And I'm not talking ego credit where you stand up and tell everybody how great you did, but you look in the mirror at the end of the night and say, boy, I had a little part in this, and boy, the public works guy did this, and the finance guy did this, and the community development director, she did this, and that's when you look in the mirror and say, boy, I think I had a good day.
Well, Steve, thank you. Thanks for your time, your knowledge, wisdom. I appreciate that, and special thank you to our sound engineer.
She did a great job.
Casey Ross.
Casey did a great job.
And for more information regarding the OL programs, for those listening, please call us at 815-836-5610, or you can email at grad, and that's GRAD, at lewisu.edu. Thanks again.
Thank you.